All right, and welcome to our commentary track for the 1941 classic, The Wolfman. I'm Andrew Wass.
I'm Jake Plumeri.
And I'm Jacob McAuliffe.
Yeah, so for our final Halloween movie
That
of
was
the
my
year.
NPR voice.
Yeah, okay. For our final Halloween movie of the year, we decided to do one of our own, all of our personal favorite classic monster movies. This is actually probably in the top 5 favorite movies of all time for me, actually. The Wolfman.
This might be my favorite of all of the original Universal monster films.
Yeah.
I think The Wolfman, since I was a kid, has always been my favorite. I love the character. I love Talbot. I just always love the tragic story, and I think what sells it more is Lon Chaney Jr.'s performance.
People say this is a good movie. People are saying it all the time.
Yeah. There we go. But no, like the score that we're playing right now, and I'm sure you've of course had to watch this movie before you've listened to it or listening to it with us on it. But the score is like really great. Just like everything about this movie, I think like Universal was treating this like a B movie, and like for all intents and purposes, it is. Like there is a few things about this that are pretty low budget, but like they did everything they could with this movie. I mean, the guy who wrote it, Kurt Sielmach, I think is how you said his name. He fled Nazi Germany, and he was like writing this to be like an allegory for the persecution of like Jews in Europe. He was Jewish, had to flee Nazi Germany. Like, they really did not just treat this like a schlocky movie. Like, this would be like the equivalent of like some movie on sci-fi being written by like a Holocaust survivor and like being like given actually good like talent behind it.
Well, that's probably how a lot of these things happened back then. They probably weren't treated very seriously. They're probably just made for a buck to be made for a buck and at a cheap price. But then, people like that come into it and they make it something a lot more.
Yeah, well, the
I
term
kind of appreciate that.
No, that's great. That's how a lot of these things happen.
and this, like I said, the studio did not care at all about this. This movie, like, is what revitalized the monster movies. They had their early hits of Dracula, Frankenstein, The Bride of Frankenstein, and The Mummy, but they had stopped for a while. So you're looking at like about 7 years or something like that difference between like Bride of Frankenstein and this. I think actually straight up. I want to say like 9 years for like Dracula and Frankenstein. I might be wrong, but like years had gone by, and then they start doing like all the sequels. Like Ghost of Frankenstein had come out right before this, and it was actually filmed like this house set was used in Ghost of Frankenstein. But like they just were churning these things out. I believe like this was filmed in like August of 1941. It was released in December of 1941.
Yeah.
Like they like filmed this, edited, and did this all like in like a quarter of a year.
I see. That's amazing. Just something that ended up having such a huge impact on the genre and on filmmaking in general. Yeah, I was done in a few months.
That's how they pumped these out back then. This was all they probably filmed like 15 pages a day, worked for 20 hours, didn't have lunch. Drove Lon Chaney Jr. into further alcoholism. By the way, better get ready for some Lon Chaney Jr. alcoholic jokes during this commentary. As much as we love the guy, it's part of our endearment towards him.
Well, how do you say about the lunch? And I think which Frankenstein was it? Ghost. Yeah, it was Ghost of Frankenstein, where they find the Frankenstein monster like at the bottom of a sulfur pit. And to like because he falls in the sulfur pit at the end of Son of Frankenstein, the previous one, and to recreate sulfur, they decided to take poor Lon Chaney Jr., who had then at that point taken over the role of Frankenstein Bela Lugosi. Boris Karloff had stopped after Ghost of Frankenstein. That was his last one. So they decided to pour cement over Lon Chaney, just like apparently a thin layer of cement, and they gave him the only air he had was through a literal drinking straw, size 2. They poured it over him, and they're like, okay, well, while it's drying, we have to be economical and do something. So they all went on lunch break. So they just all left fucking Lon Chaney Jr. Mind you, not in comfortable clothing, in the fucking Frankenstein makeup as well. So like already uncomfortable position with cement drying over him.
That man was born to suffer. Well, okay, I just want to bring up one thing here: is how Claude Rains is the father. The father. They look like brothers. This is one thing I could never buy. I love this movie, but this is the one thing that I just cannot buy. This is the father and son.
Claude Rains is a very distinguished gentleman. It's like, what did Lon Chaney Jr.'s mom look like in this scenario?
Claude Rains has like the younger hairstyle and everything.
Yeah, actually, Lon Chaney looks like the father. Isn't that what we do, boys, with our fathers who are 2 years older than us? We just...
Well, people did get married younger at that time.
Plus, by the logic of this movie, I could be your father.
Yeah, exactly.
I could be your Claude Rains.
I'm looking this up, like when these guys were.
We gotta film that now.
Yeah. We're gonna recreate this scene.
Do a remake or a parody of this, and those are the two roles you guys play.
What I like, just the stock location of Universal, the Universal backlot, and like he's supposedly like looking through a high-powered telescope. It's like, how far away is he supposedly? Because I feel like that good of a telescope, you would not be able to see any of this.
I actually like that it's obviously a backlot. It gives the whole thing sort of an insular, sort of staged feel that I think can be appropriate under certain circumstances.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they used the same backlot for Frankenstein. It looks a little familiar to that.
Yeah, that was like
scene.
Yeah, that was like the old, like I think they call it like old Europe, the European village, and they still have like a replica of it on the backlot tour now. Back like in '08, the whole backlot burned to the ground, but they did a good job recreating all the locations. Even though I don't really think they probably use too many old European villages anymore. Who knows? I will give Universal credit that they do that seemingly as a tribute to their style and like what made them famous.
Well, I think back then the reason they used these sets so much is because in the 30s and 40s it was a lot closer to that time period. So stories tend to take place back then. So that's why it was a lot more accessible. But compared to today, which you said it's not around anymore, that set on the backlot?
Yeah, like the entire backlot burned down, like the clock tower from Back to the Future, like all of it burned down. That's why like the original King Kong ride on the backlot tour got closed down because the Kong animatronic got too damaged. So they're like, okay, it's more effective for us, or cost effective for us to just do the digital ride screens that you now see when you go on the backlot now. Apparently, Lon Chaney Jr. was 17 years younger than Claude Rains.
Wow.
Yeah, he does not look 17 years younger than Claude Rains.
No, I think that's Lon Chaney Jr.'s problem.
Yeah. It's not him. It's his personal appearance that we have a problem with.
Well, it's his alcoholism.
We're judging him for his appearance.
I think he's actually 20. He's 23 here.
He was born in 1906, and this came out in 1941, so he was in his late 30s.
Yeah, he doesn't look good.
Well, when you look at like the last like Frankenstein, like House of Dracula, I think was the last one, whichever the last monster meet-up movie was. Oh, actually, Abbott Meet Frankenstein would have been the, technically speaking, last one, and that came out in 1948. So you're only looking at 7 years difference between this and his final outing as the Wolfman. He really aged hard. Like these movies, and doing the Mummy movies and doing the Frankenstein movies. They really aged him hard. And he tried killing himself after Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein was over. He just
should be laughing.
I'm not joking.
This whole thing is just
himself.
This whole thing is it's turning into like a teardown of his appearance, like his physical appearance.
What do you expect? He made all these movies within a year. It's gonna wear you down. You don't get fucking any breaks. You go from this right into Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. Yeah, we got. See you tomorrow, Lon. Oh fuck.
The only break
Jumping concrete on him.
The only break he gets is being in the sulfur concrete or whatever.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, finally I can rest.
That's when they shut the lights off.
Don't have to remember any lines to do this.
All right, okay. As much as we love to make fun of him, I gotta say, like, he's a great trooper throughout all this.
Oh, yeah.
He's really like giving a consistent great performance over the course of all these films. He's never half-assing it. He's always very soulful. Your heart always goes out to the guy. You always feel his pain. Now that could be a reflection of the actual pain that he's going through, but it makes for good drama.
Well, he even said in an interview that he was very proud of the fact that the Wolfman was all his. He's like, that was my baby. He's like, all the other monsters I played, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, I was playing them the second time around. So, like, even if he tried fucking killing himself and these movies were hellish for him, he did feel proud of it. And they mentioned in the commentary track for this that this might have even been personal for him, like with his own trying to escape from the shadow of, his father. Because, his name wasn't really Lon Chaney Jr., it was Creighton, which I think that's a name that should make a comeback, Creighton. But his agent,
that name,
his agents, forced him essentially, like, listen, you want work, you should change your name to Lon Chaney Jr. And even then, this was like this and Of Mice and Men were like the only big things he had done, and like I think they said like the 10 or so years since he had changed his name. Obviously very big, but even changing his name didn't get him anything. So
he was a real trooper, always working, never quite reached the levels of his father.
Or Boris Karloff or Lugosi.
Yeah, but he always still carved out a good piece of himself within this lore, and that's enough for an actor, especially at that time.
In his own time, he didn't reach the levels of his father. I think now he's obviously much more remembered.
Well,
it's a shame.
And if you look at the box set that we're using this from, the classic monster box set Universal put out, they have on the top row of the DVD set, they have Bela Lugosi, Frankenstein, and then him. He's in the top tier now.
As he should be.
Yeah, and he played all of the major monsters. He played Dracula and Son of Dracula, Dracula's daughter. Yeah, he played Frankenstein a handful
He played
times.
Dracula's daughter?
No, he played Dracula in Dracula's daughter. And then he played Frankenstein a handful of times, and he played the Mummy a handful of times. But he's the only one in the classic cycle that played the Wolfman. So everyone's like, oh my God, Boris Karloff. It's like, he did it 3 times, but fucking Lon Chaney did it. How many times he did this one? Meets the Frankenstein meets Wolfman, House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein, and then Adam Costello meet Frankenstein. So he played the Wolfman 5 times.
It's weird that Boris Karloff went on to become known as sort of a prestigious B-movie actor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of prestige, and I feel like Lon Chaney Jr. never got the same level of respect, at least in his time.
Yeah.
Boris Karloff became highly respected in his own time.
Yeah, despite his career falling apart too, he's still
Boris Karloff kind of reminds me of Christopher Lee in terms of his career.
I can agree with that. Classic trained British actor who started in schlocky movies.
Wasn't Boris Karloff Yugoslavian or something?
No,
he was Eastern European.
I think he's British.
I don't
Or
remember.
maybe he moved.
No,
He immigrated from-
Bela Lugosi was Hungarian.
No, I thought Boris Karloff was Eastern European. Or maybe I'm wrong.
I'll look it up.
By the way, this movie looks fantastic.
Oh yeah,
Great cinematography, especially coming up in the forest scenes. There's one shot in particular that I love. Yeah, this looks great. I mean, I know it's all a set, but it looks great.
Yeah, this is what Halloween movies should be. I love the black and white, the atmosphere, the copious amounts of fog. I know we're in I think they say we're supposed to be in Wales. They didn't want in the original script they were supposed to be in Wales, but they didn't want to offend any market. They didn't want to specifically say when they keep having lines about we're backwards people up here, full of stupid people. They didn't want to specifically say what country any of these were, and especially then after World War II, like with like Frankenstein, they didn't want to be in Germany, and we're like, oh, blah blah blah. We're in Village Frankenstein. Well, what country are we? We're in Village Frankenstein.
See, there's a problem every time they try and remake, not just the Wolfman, but any of the Universal monster properties. I'm sorry, I'm distracted by the fact they're taking a leisurely stroll through like this hellscape. It's that you modernize it and they lose a lot of the atmosphere. I'm not saying that that's required. Like you could do a modern atmospheric version of these characters, but they don't execute it.
Yeah.
The look is just so classic with these films, and when they modernize it, they don't find a good way of supplementing it or replacing it.
No, I would agree with that, and that's the problem I think you have with the new like Tom Cruise Mummy movie is that.
That's what I was thinking the whole time during that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's like this doesn't feel like a Universal monster movie, and I like the original two Brendan Fraser Mummy movies because they did a good job setting that like in the 1920s, trying to make the serial kind of feel like the serial. Movies and all that from that time period. By the way, I did look it up, but Boris Karloff was born in England.
Oh, okay.
So.
I was wrong then. So, but that's this. I think why those Brendan Fraser films work is because they still stay true to the fundamentals of the concept. Despite, I mean, it's still more of a Raiders of the Lost Ark-esque movie, but it still stayed true to the nature of the Mummy. Because the Mummy, it could conceivably be more of an adventure film given where it takes place and with the archaeology and everything, so it's a little more conceivable versus this recent film that it feels like just trying to ape like a Marvel movie or something like that. There wasn't as much thought put into it. It's a little more cynical. Where here I guess you could make a more modern Wolfman movie. You just have to do it the right way. And I think the key to that is staying true to the fundamentals of what makes the Wolfman, and there are ways to do that. I think.
I'd say they did it with American Werewolf in London.
Yeah, that's another great example. And
it's just like there's like a certain there's like an atmosphere that's very iconic and associated with the Universal monster movies that is hard to recreate. I think even if you with the Wolfman remake that they did, which took place in the same time period and everything, but just the time period combined with the low budget sets and everything creates a very distinctive look with these old movies that is very unique.
Yeah, I don't for a minute believe we're in an actual what is that word? We're clearly in some stage 24 and downtown Studio City, right where the friggin' Jurassic Park ride is right outside of these walls, but it feels just better. It feels more visceral, and there's a fine line between, something like this or Plan 9 from Outer Space with the fucking wooden, tombstones that are falling over. But they're I think you completely hit the nail on the head that there's something about the low budget of this that makes it feel that much better.
This is that shot I was talking about.
Yeah,
it's great.
Well, again, there's a staginess that I kind of appreciate. It gives it almost like a fairy tale folklore kind of feel where there's an artifice to it all that, if anything, kind of dials up the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And the smoke too. It's always a good trick. It's a cheap way to make the set look bigger.
When they said they only built 4 or 5 of these trees, that they would just keep moving them around in different configurations to make the wood seem bigger. So they're probably filming only in one small part of the soundstage. They probably had in the rest of the soundstage various other sets from the movie, like the house or other things. So they probably only had a small section of the stage, and they just move that tree over there, put this one in the forefront, put that one to the left, and it's very effective. I never even knowing that can still be okay, that's the same tree.
Yeah.
But,
should have been just we should shoot him in the head right here.
Now, people bring up, and I never really thought about it growing up, that it's funny that the Bela Lugosi werewolf or Wolfman is an actual wolf. Now, some people make jokes about how it's just like, oh yeah, you got the low budget. They didn't want to put Bela Lugosi through the makeup. We had to reserve all the torture for Lon Chaney Jr. in this one, or they didn't think about it. But I wonder if there was some thought to as your time as a Wolfman goes on, the more wolf-like you get, or if there was some thought to we want it to be a complete 100% surprise what the Wolfman looks like. And I know, they had him on the poster, on the original 1941 poster, it's still a drawing, but still, like, seeing the Wolfman in action the first time, you didn't want to see it as Bela Lugosi, who's on screen for, already going to be, like, 2 to 3 seconds, as is.
It's interesting. It's interesting you bring that up. You ever see the movie Wolf with Jack Nicholson?
No.
Because that's kind of the implication in that movie, is that you just slowly turn into a wolf after time goes on. Because he gets bitten by like what looks like a normal wolf, and then at the end it basically implies that he turned into just a normal wolf. Or something like that.
Yeah. I wonder.
And then the rest of the movie is like Jack Nicholson in awkward makeup, like waddling around, pretending to be a wolf monster.
That'll be our next commentary, actually. We're doing that for the next Halloween one.
It's an interesting movie. It's got like incredible talent behind it, and it's not very good.
Yeah, I think we talked about this, how I think that was meant to be more like a prestige horror film, sort of like in the vein of The Exorcist. You got Mike Nichols directing, you got Nicholson, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Ennio Morricone did the music.
Yeah, Christopher
Welch did the production design.
Yeah, it was very high end, but it's one of those things that just falls on its face.
Well, it's like with those the adaptations of Frankenstein and Dracula we had like in the 90s, like the Bram Stoker or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where it's like there always seems to be the desire to let's make these movies better, let's make them for the adults, and it's like you get mixed results. I haven't seen all of like Bram Stoker's Dracula or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, very good movie.
Yeah.
Apart from Keanu Reeves, damn good movie. It's actually Gary Oldman's my favorite Dracula.
Yeah.
You might have just cursed our account by criticizing Keanu Reeves, the it guy of the moment.
We'll cut it out.
Well, like with
bleep
Wolf,
it out.
Yeah, it's gonna make it sound worse. With Wolf, it's not supposed to be like the Wolfman, though. It's like a werewolf story, but it's a totally different story.
Well, I mean, there's
whereas like Bram Stoker's Dracula is telling like the same basic story as you would tell in like Dracula movies.
Well, to be fair with that, though, like, this, and I was looking for a time to bring it up, there had been werewolf movies. They had, Werewolf of London before this, and, I'm trying to remember the name of the various Wolfman movies, or werewolf movies Universal had done before this, but there was no equivalent to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or Bram Stoker's Dracula. You can see, like, some of the early Universal monster movies were all adaptations, loose adaptations, albeit.
Yeah.
You had, H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man. You had whoever the hell wrote Phantom of the Opera, Hunchback of Notre Dame. That's like by the time they got to this, and also a little earlier with The Mummy, they're just taking folklore. So potentially Wolf, I don't know like what year that came out, and that could have been like, okay, we're gonna try and do the prestige werewolf movie and try and. Because when you get to it, it's like there have only been a handful of werewolf movies, like you said, American Werewolf in London and all that, that have been like really like A-class werewolf pictures.
It was trying to be a prestige werewolf.
So that's what I'm
not
saying,
necessarily a Wolfman movie though.
Yeah,
just a werewolf movie.
If you think about it, there's only about a handful of great werewolf movies.
Yeah,
I can probably name them on my one hand. You got this. You got American Werewolf in London. You have Dog Soldiers. Have you seen Dog Soldiers?
No.
It's a great fucking movie. The Howling.
and
Wallace and
Frankenstein.
And Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were Rabbit.
That's a great one. I don't know if I count that, but that's a great movie.
Sorry, Alvin and the Chipmunks beat the Wolfman. I fucked up the obvious joke.
I was going to say Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, but that was actually also a were-rabbit.
Cheese, Harry. Cheese.
Lupin, stay away from that cheese.
When did the penguin show up? What book here was that? But it's, what I was going in was that this created the werewolf mythology, really. Like, we had man turning into wolf, stories before this, but, Kurt Siamak, he made up a lot of the tropes you see with werewolf movies and werewolf mythology after this. The full moon, silver bullets, or silver anything, the pentagram in the hand, he really just took, the man turning into beast, which when you get down to it is just a slightly more beastly version of Dracula, or Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Well, the original lore is, it's not the full moon.
I think it's the presence of Wolfman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they want, he wanted something that was completely out of his control, being, because it's like, okay, fucking don't go into the woods, just don't go to a flower shop, versus I have literally no control over this whatsoever.
And that's a lot more interesting. That makes for a much more interesting character.
It's interesting it was all codified. It was codified with this movie, though.
Yeah. And it's also really weird that they never actually showed a single shot of the full moon in this. They they have the famous speech and all that that the gypsy woman does, Melina the gypsy woman does, and but we never once see the full moon.
It's because they couldn't afford it. They were just going to take stock footage from the George Méliès movie, Off to the Moon, and then you're going to see the moon with the face, and then Lon Chaney going ah.
Well, I was going to say, even back then they probably didn't even have much stock footage of anything.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of any earlier Universal movie that has definitive shots of the moon, and I can't think of anything.
Shit, even on your portable DVD player, the movie looks great.
Yeah.
Looks better there, actually. Yeah, I would love to see another version of this done proper. Well, that's what those Blumhouse movies. They're doing The Invisible Man, which is how they should have done these whole
dark universe.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's going to be a dark universe anymore. I think it's.
But what they originally should have done.
Yeah, more low budget. But then Invisible Man's like a really cool twist on it, and I hope they do the same with the others. Like with the Wolfman, I think there's a lot of potential. I think you should do like a whodunit murder mystery.
Jake, the Wolfman needs to be an action movie starring Dwayne Johnson, where he does his own real stunts, flying out of airplanes, and London has to be at stake. That's what the modern audience demands.
You can't cast someone like The Rock as the Wolfman because he's practically a monster in real life.
He's actually less scary as the Wolfman.
Yeah, you want to probably cuddle with him, but I mean, you need like a Lon Chaney Jr., just someone more
like Benicio del Toro.
Actually, he could.
I thought he did great as the Wolfman.
He did the best he could given the material. But you need someone like that, someone who's just very vulnerable. You need just a regular person. That's what kind of makes it so terrifying.
That's the thing. My girlfriend had never seen this movie until this previous Halloween. She had never seen the movie. She'd seen clips of it. But she knew the whole full moon, blah blah blah. I heard me making references to how much I loved it and all that. And we watch it, and at the end, she's like, "That was actually very sad. I am legitimately saddened by this." And Lon Chaney Jr. Summed up his character up by saying, he's the most vulnerable of the monsters.
Yeah.
Frankenstein's kind of pushed to being evil. Dracula's just pure evil. The Invisible Man was driven mad and all that. But it's he feels terrible about what he is doing. He doesn't want to be the Wolfman anymore. By the time you get to the later sequels, he's not even looking for a cure. He's just please kill me. I don't want to live anymore. Which may have been Lon Chaney Jr.'s actual viewpoint by that. That might not have been in the script.
He may have not been acting. He may have actually broken the fourth wall there. No one was listening.
That's good acting, Lon. Please, no, I'm serious.
But yeah, I mean that's some of the best of the Wolfman though. When this thing that's just so outside of his control. Especially this good guy.
For sure. But, yeah, I mean, Lon Chaney Jr. Really just brought his all into it. And that's the thing. Like Jake said, you need to have a vulnerable person playing this, and that's I think what the Dark Universe was making. The mistake was they wanted to make these action movies. They wanted this to be Universal's Avengers movie, and it's like, there's action scenes in these movies, especially when you get to the matchup movies where they're fighting.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is, like a movie with very little action, and very little action, but a lot of heart behind it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with the Wolfman. That's what you gotta stick to. The full moon's gonna come out. He can't do a thing about it, and he doesn't want to turn into the Wolfman, and he's gonna die. I mean, the story like this only ends one way.
Yeah.
And that's kind of part of the tension behind it. The more sympathetic the character is, colliding with the inevitability of their death, that's what makes it all the more tragic. And I think it's important to stick to that. That's what American Werewolf in London did so well too. You really got to know David as a character, and you really loved him, and but you felt bad when he died.
I always thought it was interesting how that movie actually uses quite a bit of humor to get you to really sympathize with those characters.
Yeah, and that's another way to do it.
Well, and you have that issue, like you said, it's inevitable, and that's what makes it so sad, with his death. I know he keeps getting resurrected in each movie, but there is something to be said that it says something about his character that at the end of the last matchup movie, which I think was House of Dracula. I keep getting the House of Dracula and Frankenstein confused which one came out first, but whichever the last matchup of the classic monster movies ends with him being cured. Like, you see Lon Chaney, he goes out, the full moon comes out, he's a little scared, but then nothing happens, and he's happy, and it's like, I know I should be happy for this character, but it's like, it just feels like a betrayal of like what the message of the story was.
I mean, yes.
I guess in fairness, at that point, what else do you do with it?
Well, that's the thing I was about to say. In principle, yes, but if by that point you have this character show up so many times, you got to do something else with it. Otherwise, he just keeps dying and being resurrected. Sure. So you might as well just pull the trigger and cure him. And God, the guy deserves a happy ending too. He's suffered through these 5 movies. It's like, I think by that point it's pretty earned.
Especially since it was his last movie, I suppose. But I don't know whether they knew that at the time or not. Also, it was House of Dracula. House of Dracula was the last one.
Okay.
So just got that confirmed. But yeah, so no, they did, Wolfman in 1941. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman in 1943, House of Frankenstein in 44, and House of Dracula in 45. So, they didn't have one in 1942. I'm sure he was doing one of the Mummy sequels or like one of those in 1942. But they churned these out in 5 years. In less than 5 years, because as I said, this came out in like December of 1941. This came out right shortly after Pearl Harbor. So it had to be very sobering, going like, our naval base just got bombed. We want to go see Lon Chaney Jr.
Hey, no studio executive can complain about that, about the bad timing of a movie. If people can make The Wolfman a hit right after Pearl Harbor, fuck it.
There you go. My favorite classic Hollywood.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
People want to escape to the movies. It doesn't matter what the content is. They want to be entertained by a great story.
I think the content gets blown way out of proportion, or the context into which it's being released is blown out of proportion.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Much like the USS Arizona just being completely blown.
Yeah, people wanted to fucking watch The Wolfman. They could distinguish between the two.
Mm-hmm. We're getting into the Hunchback of Notre Dame Feast of Fools scene. Okay.
Was Jason Alexander going to pop up or something?
Yes. He should play the Wolfman.
Wolfman!
Hellfire!
Damn it! There should have been like a, I don't know, I am not the biggest fan, I haven't seen everything, but was there a Seinfeld Halloween special?
No.
There's just a damn shame right there.
That would be make it about something. You'd
That's
see that
just
maybe
a
in the
damn
later.
shame.
You'd see that maybe in the later seasons, but not with the Larry David stuff. Like there was never anything like that. It was always about. It was about nothing.
George, I just went outside and saw Wolfman.
Yeah. I mean, that would be something that would appear in like the 7th season, where George probably thought he got bit by a wolf, and then by the end he like takes his shirt off in Central Park and starts howling at the moon. That's something you would see in later Seinfeld. That's not something you'd see in the first 6 seasons. Anyway,
How much Seinfeld have you seen? I'm just curious.
I've seen every episode. I'm a big Seinfeld fan.
Gotcha.
Those first 6 seasons are Larry David, the best, and then after that, it's fine, but it's very good, but it's not the same. It's kind of a different show, but it's still very good.
But just look at the intensity here on Lon Chaney Jr.'s face. Like, this is a B movie that everyone is trying their fucking hardest at.
It's a great scene.
Oh yeah, they're taking it seriously.
I mean, there was a scene that was filmed but ultimately not used because it didn't work, where Larry fights a bear, and they got an actual bear.
Jesus Christ! Wait, were they gonna make Lon Chaney Jr. fight a bear?
They did.
Absolutely.
They did. No, so the scene was I think it was supposed to be right before this, where it was like, any man who can fight and pin the bear gets a prize. And, it was said, Larry, starts taking his coat and tie off with a determined look in his face. And he goes in, and it was supposed to be, he starts fighting the bear, and the bear is scared shitless of him, and it was supposed to be the old trope of the animals can sense evil.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was, when they were filming this, the bear had already gone into hibernation. So, them, it being the 1940s, they didn't give a crap about animals. So, wake up, bear. They're waking this poor thing up. So now it's, really pissed off, and Lon Chaney Jr. gets into the ring. And, it starts attacking him. The handler can't get a hold of him. Lon Chaney Jr. dives under, a carriage that was there, and, famously Evelyn Anchor's, the love interest was on the sideline. Of course, she has to be involved in the scene somehow. And the bear's coming at her, and a lighting technician just grabbed her and pulled her up onto the lighting platform he was on as, everyone fled the scene, or the set, and, they decided to, cut it because it's, it looked terrible, and they couldn't get the footage of Lon Chaney Jr. scaring the bear.
Well, no, because he was probably shitting his own pants.
He's like, wait, what? You want me to fight a bear? Can I have liquor before I do this?
That's why he takes this so seriously, because he was genuinely worried if he was going to come out of production alive each time.
Look at him. He looks genuinely terrified.
He's like, I got to fight that bear tomorrow. I'm never going to make it out.
If he took his suit coat off right now, you would just see horrible sweat stains under his arm. He would just be like, I'm terrified. One more Lon Chaney fact to break up the tension, though, of thinking about his alcoholism by confronting the fact of his alcoholism. On the set of Ghost of Frankenstein, he apparently was getting constantly shit-faced, and the set was a labyrinth. So between all the makeup on him and being drunk, he was constantly lost in the set, just lumbering around trying to find his way out. Because they would just say cut, and then he would just walk away to another part of the set and take a nap. So they would be yelling for him, hey, Lon, get up, and he's lumbering around trying to find his way out.
Oh.
Imagine you're just some stage and you see a drunken Lon Chaney growling at you, trying to lumber out in the Frankenstein makeup.
You said that was Ghost of Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Wow.
Made right before this movie.
Well, there's something you wouldn't want to encounter. A Ghost of Frankenstein. How do you encounter a Ghost of Frankenstein? Frankenstein's an abomination. He doesn't have a soul. That was the point of the story, right?
Well, in that movie, Victor Frankenstein's nephew or something, they get very confused into the relations of those later sequels. I think it's supposed to be his nephew. He sees the ghost of his uncle being you should continue my work.
There was one where Frankenstein literally didn't have a soul. Wasn't he just an empty shell in the third one or something?
Oh, that's where they swapped brains, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in a coma for the majority of the movie, and then they put Bela Lugosi's brain in him.
Yeah, that's right. Frankenstein has always been my personal favorite, but it's weird because the Frankenstein movie only adapts part of the book. Yeah, and the Bride of Frankenstein, the sequel, is actually a much more close adaptation of the concept.
It's much more faithful. I mean,
it's more developed as well.
It's not an exact adaptation of the book, but to me, it's a lot more faithful to the spirit of the book. And it actually does take like a good portion of that book.
Has there ever been like a great adaptation of Frankenstein, the book, from like an adaptation?
No.
Yeah, it really hasn't.
There hasn't.
That's
That-
I really, that book is a favorite of mine.
No,
Thinking of it now, it's like, yeah, you've had good Frankenstein movies, of course, just not like an adaptation of the book.
I agree.
Yeah, I can't think other than the Coppola one where like Frankenstein has any form of intelligence, really.
I think, that script to the Brown movie I think is fantastic. I think it's just the directing that kind of hampers it. It's too over the top.
Are you kidding? That's what makes that movie so great.
That's
It explodes at the end or whatever. Like, it's amazing.
I remember Frank Darabont even said, he's like, best script I've ever written, worst movie I've ever seen. It shows you can really fuck up a great script, because it does have a great script. It's very faithful to the book, but still its own movie. But it's just the directing. It's so over the top.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, back to the Wolfman.
Yeah, that sequence we just passed, like, I don't know why. Every time I see that, like, it feels very out of place. Like, the weird hallucinations. It felt like almost a cross between, like, an Ed Wood movie and, like, the tunnel scene from, like, Willy Wonka. Like, I imagine, like, Gene Wilder should be, like, going, there's no earthly way of knowing.
Well, it's one of those things where I wouldn't be surprised, Jacob, if Sam Raimi, like, got inspired by Darkman. Like, like that hallucination scene seems like something that Sam Raimi would be inspired by.
That's a good point, actually. I would agree with that.
Because Darkman certainly takes a page out of these old school horror movies.
Now, I like this transformation because you can see over the evolution of the different Wolfman movies, like, how, like, precise the transformation got. Like, you can see, like, as they do the cross dissolve in a few seconds of his legs changing, you could just see blatantly the shape of his pant legs changing. Versus, like, when you get to, like, House of Dracula and Axel Meet Frankenstein, they got really good to the point that, like, when I think it's House of Frankenstein, he's laying in bed. One of the sequels, he's laying in bed and transforming, and they, like, made a plastered mold of the back of his head, made it look like a pillow so he couldn't move. Like, his head would always be in the same position. So when they're layering the makeup over him, it would just naturally dissolve from one shot to the other. So it's like, it's very cool seeing it as the years went on. Like, they learned as they were going along.
Yeah.
And then finally, how far into the movie are we now? And we're seeing the Wolfman for the very first time.
And he's only on screen for a few minutes in this whole movie.
Yeah.
Who directed this? Ang Lee. That was the best joke from 2003.
I appreciate that. This is great, though. It's
a great intro shot there.
This is great. Oh, this just looks great.
Well, I mean, Jack Pierce, like, really outdid himself on the makeup. He was the one who did, like, the makeup for all, like, the classic monsters, I mean, he literally is the reason why, when you think Frankenstein, the flat head and bolts, that's not from the novel. It's not from any adaptation prior to it. He was just, like, a genius when it came to makeup. And, they have numerous documentaries about him. And, like, I think the makeup on this is especially one of his career highlights. What does a Wolfman look like? You have to make sure you can tell it's Lon Chaney Jr. and a man, but, like, how do you make a wolf also in there? And I think he does a really good job, like, with the snout coming off him does look wolf-like, making the hair and all that. This is all being applied by hand.
Well, it's a very iconic look. Like, that's the thing is with the Universal monsters. It's like, obviously other companies make movies about these characters, but Universal codified the classic looks for these monsters. Like the Wolfman looking like this, like a man with wolf features, or like Frankenstein with the bolts in his neck and everything. Like, that comes from these movies.
I always hate in other werewolf movies where they're just a wolf. I think that fucking sucks. I want to see, like, a wolf person.
Yeah.
Like, that to me is part of the excitement. It's like, what's the point? I hate that. So just want to say that. That's always annoyed me, even since I was a kid. I never liked that.
Which prominent ones did that?
I wouldn't say prominent ones, just other werewolf movies throughout the years.
Yeah, like which werewolf movies have done that? I'm trying to think.
I think Wolfman was one. I know everyone's seen that movie.
Yeah.
Teen Wolf didn't do that.
I know the Twilight movies, they do that. It's like a wolf. Well, no, seriously.
I know.
You know what it is with the Twilight movies? I almost wonder if it's supposed to be like a dog thing, where it's not really supposed to be scary when they turn into the werewolves. In theory, it's like a more romantic thing where it's like you're a dog.
Oh, yeah. Really romantic, really sexy.
I mean, I'm trying to think like, so
Yeah.
it's like, it's not just some horrible monster. It's like, oh, you're either a human that we like or you're like a dog that we get along with, that kind of thing. I mean, I don't know. I haven't even seen Twilight. I'm just like spitballing here.
Well, I can't remember who it was.
I have no authority to speak on this subject.
Someone summed up the problem with like modern monster movies is we went from being fearful of the monsters to wanting to fuck them. And yeah, I think that's the problem. It's like no one wants to fuck Lon Chaney Jr. Like, look how gross he looks right now. No, but no, I know like there's always been the topic, oh, Dracula is sexy, the sex appeal of Dracula, but like you're supposed to be fearful of these monsters. Like, the Wolfman's not gonna get along with you and be like an ally to like a vampire. It's like, no, he is like a one-track mind. He's going to fucking kill you.
I think you can tell whatever story you want with these characters as long as you tell it well.
Well, that's the thing. Again, going back to like how these, like over the years, how these movies can sort of change. Like The Mummy being more of like an action adventure film. Like with Dracula, again, going to the fundamentals, I think there is something sexual about Dracula. Yeah. So I think it's pretty conceivable that you can make more of a love story from Dracula. I think you can do that. Just don't totally lose everything about that character. Yeah. Or the concept of vampirism.
Well, I was more referring to like sexy werewolves, which is like its own subgenre. It's like Red Letter Media. What was that like werewolf movie they did that was like very inspired by Twilight? They just want to focus on like werewolves in it. I give something like In Colony or something like that. It's like just like a garbage movie, and it's like you can do it with like Dracula, but it's like when they tried doing that Frankenstein movie for Aaron Eckhart. It's like they try and make him into a sexy Frankenstein monster too.
I think it rings false there just because honestly that's like execution. Like it's not like the point of the movie is that Frankenstein is a sexual figure. It's just they made him look that way because it was an action movie and you need your action character to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Well, it's a shame too because the original concept for Frankenstein was like, I think it's based on like a comic.
Yeah, it is.
Is that he's like a private eye, and like that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that would make a great network TV show. He's Frankenstein, and he solves crimes.
Well, it wasn't just that though. It really seemed to be steeped within this gothic world and everything. He was like the monster, but as like this cop who hunted down like monsters. Like it really.
Oh my god! I'm gonna write my own I Frankenstein network TV show now. Every episode he fights some different kind of monster or something that's portrayed as just like some guy in a trench coat.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the Fox show Sleepy Hollow, which I tried getting Jake to watch, which you guys should all check out the first 2 seasons. Don't watch the 3rd or 4th season. That show got really bad really quick. But, small town cops fighting monsters. It was great. The Headless Horseman was one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You like that, Jake, right?
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Ichabod Crane is a time-traveling hunky soldier.
I didn't like that either.
Well, it's like, because it's like, the point is like if you make a werewolf story where the werewolf being sexualized or a romantic figure is part of the story, that's cool. That's just very different from like, we need to make Aaron Eckhart look like an action star. Or like an action hero. And so that's why he looks like that in that movie.
Well, and I will retract my point to a certain degree with the werewolf because there is the conflict of, with Evelyn Anchors, he's in love with her and, she falls in love with him. And you see this in, like, each werewolf sequel, he finds, like, another beautiful woman to fall in love with him. Which I think that's the most unrealistic part of these movies. It's like with like the Hitchcock movies with Jimmy Stewart being in his like late 50s and like Grace Kelly and Kim Novak in their like late 20s or like swooning over him. Doesn't make sense, but whatever. But it's like you can have that drama of, listen, I'm in love with you, but I will kill you if like the moon is full and we're together. So
that's part of the whole appeal of it. That's something called drama.
Yeah, but having like the Wolfman also be a sex symbol,
too,
I think that's where you make the mistake, and that's what I'm referring to.
Oh, this looks great here.
Yeah, I feel like this is a real church.
Yeah, guys, we got 10 minutes.
Yeah, congregation starts at 9 o'clock. We got to be out of here by 8:50.
Well, there was also apparently like originally a scene that was cut out where Larry would have gone to confession and like turn into the Wolfman during like the confession and like attack the priest through like the confessional, and like the censor said, reviewing the script said, absolutely not. We're not going to piss off the Catholic Church doing a Wolfman movie.
That would have been a great schlocky scene. He would have come in and he would have been like, "I'm here to confess." And they're like, "Confess what?" And there's silence. "Confess what?" And it's like, "I'm gonna eat you!" Well, I would have ripped his throat out.
I feel like that isn't a movie. Oh, no, that's The Exorcist 3.
Oh, you know what? I thought you were gonna say Silver Bullet for a sec.
You know?
The scene from Silver Bullet, it's actually a great moment. The church scene.
But it's not the confession booth.
No, it's certainly not limited to the confession booth.
Okay, yeah.
Well, Boondock Saints, as I said, they did a great scene, like with a tense scene in between a confessional booth, so you can do it.
I'm sorry, we're talking about a good movie right now. It was.
Stay on topic. Silver Bullet.
Hey, everyone loves Boondock Saints. We all loved it in college, right?
No, I think I never loved it, even as a 15-year-old. Or, excuse me, 17-year-old. I thought it was shitty. Anyway, let's talk about The Wolfman, which is a much better movie.
So Gary Busey starred in Silver Bullet.
Yes.
And it was a pretty wild movie. Definitely one of the crazier Stephen King ones.
Yeah, I think he wrote that when he was on in the 80s. When I say in the 80s, just it's a double entree for his
Yeah, I remember the church scene, and I remember the kid on like a rocket-powered wheelchair.
Get the fuck out of there when he saw the werewolf. Yeah.
And Gary Busey's like, "Where's that werewolf?
Watch out for the werewolf!"
I can't. We should do Cat's Eye commentary next. Remember that movie?
I'm sorry, I don't have my Stephen King encyclopedia in front of me. Which one was that?
That was like a weird anthology movie he did. Like it wasn't. I don't think based off anything he wrote. He was just like a producer on it, and it was just like this cat like kept getting involved in these like stories. Like one of them is like James Woods like is trying to quit smoking, and he hires a company like to help him quit smoking, and like every time you smoke, we're gonna like taser your wife, and then like if you smoke again, we're gonna like cut your daughter's hand off, or we're gonna kill her, or something like that. It's just like James Woods trying to overcome smoking to make sure his family doesn't get killed. And then the cat gets to Drew Barrymore's house, and like weird gnome, devil, elf creatures come out, and the cat has to save the day. And she like saves it, and then like Drew Barrymore's like, "Oh, I love this cat. Can we keep it, Mom and Dad?" Like, yeah, sure. Apparently, elves are real, and we have a dead elf scattered across your room. But yeah, we got a pet cat now.
Well, I'm glad that had everything to do with the Wolfman.
I'm just saying, the '80s was a dark time for Stephen King, wrapping it around.
It was even a darker time for Lon Chaney Jr. because he was dead.
He's been dead for like 15 years at that point.
Exactly.
He made it to the 70s. Good for him.
Shit.
Hold on. They're talking about his son.
His son, that's only like 5 years younger than him. Yeah, that's the one thing I will say. Like, they could have like had his character being like such an asshole right now. Be like, I don't care, he needs to toughen up, blah, 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 stiff up her lip. It's like they really made him like a sympathetic father. And it's that I think that like plays up the tragedy of it more. That like they spent all these years not being around each other because of some conflict we don't see, but like we can see that he actually does care for her son, and that there is a reconciliation coming that is ruined by this.
That's a good.
It's a shame that he
would have
wasn't
been much better if he just hated him and thought he needed to be tougher. And then at the end, the werewolf would have been there, and he's just like, "You're still a weakling," and would have been screaming at him. And then the werewolf would have killed him, and the audience would have been like, "Yay!"
I clapped.
I was liking these scenes. It looks like he's like sneaking around on his tiptoes.
Well, he had to actually because of the way the shoes were designed. He had to actually walk on his tiptoes.
Oh, so was it breaking his feet?
I can't remember like how they said this. The like shoes shoes, slippers, whatever you want to call it, were constructed, but there was like something about like the arch of the foot did force him to like almost tiptoe the entire time.
Well, he's actually in pain here. That's a real bear trap. He's actually crying out for help. Everyone's at lunch.
Get it on film.
They didn't tell Lon Chaney Jr. they were doing it, so they had to ADR Animal Growl because it really he was like, ah, son of a bitch! He's just screaming out to the cast members. He's like, Claude, please help me get this off of me.
Sorry, old boy. I'm going to lunch. Fuck you.
I'm reading the script for some movie called Casablanca. Yeah, he goes from this to like 8 months later being in Casablanca. Like, talk about a weird year for Claude Rains.
When did The Invisible Man come out?
Like
Before.
31.
Before, okay.
Yeah, like 32 or something like that.
Also one of the best Universal movies. I think it's this, Invisible Man, Bride of Frankenstein. I think they're the best ones.
Yeah. That's the thing, like, everyone always holds Dracula, but I will say, like, Bela Lugosi is fantastic in it, but it's like, I think, yeah, it's a very dry movie. I've never been a fan of it. Same with The Mummy.
I'm going to say it's very boring. I think Bela Lugosi, and I like the actor who plays Van Helsing.
I think it's most notable for codifying that Universal monster look for Dracula with like the widow's peak and everything.
It's the same thing with The Mummy. That first movie's kind of a letdown.
Well, that's the thing, he's a mastermind in the movie. Like, he's very, very, like, little of the movies. He's the Mummy. He's, like, the Mummy for, like, the opening scene, which I think that's a great little 5-minute short film.
It is. It's a great payoff at the end. It's actually pretty creepy.
Yeah.
I would say, as a kid, I was more into, like, the Hammer horror films. I didn't really get into these till many years later.
Yeah. Well, I remember, like, for the 10th anniversary of, like, AMC's, like, horror, like, I can't remember what they call it, like, horror marathons. They started running the classic Universal movies, so that's, like, how I saw these. Like, you know, they would have, like, the Jasons and, like, the Halloween movies and, like, hardcore horror movies on at nighttime, but, like, they had these classic black and white movies on earlier in the day and the weekends. You know, this is back before AMC had, you know, all their shows. This is probably, like...
Back when they showed...
movies that were classics from
this country that are regarded in high esteem.
Yeah, well, because I want to say this was like 05, 06, so yeah, we're like a couple of years away from Mad Men and Breaking Bad, so it's like, yeah, other than like a few of their like round table movie discussion shows, it was just, showing old movies, so they had time to show all these, like Wolfman and Dracula and Frankenstein, and like then all the like weird like Invisible Man Returns sequels and stuff like that.
My favorite Frankenstein that I watched on AMC was Frankenstein Conquers the World, the Japanese kaiju movie. That was on AMC one day. I remember watching that as a kid, and I was like, this is awesome. Frankenstein's a kid who turns giant and ends up having to fight a giant dinosaur. That's how that story should be told.
Yeah.
That's what Guillermo del Toro should make.
That's a sequel to Pacific Rim.
He'll get nominated for Best Picture.
I love Frankenstein.
You know, I think the sad thing is the last really good Frankenstein and last really good like Wolfman movie were the Alvin the Chipmunk movies. Like, I think they have those characters done right. You enjoyed them, right, Jake?
Oh, I loved them as a kid. I forgot.
That's a pretty high pedestal to put up.
Yeah, I'm gonna hesitate before I agree with you there.
No,
I would say Dog Soldiers was the last great werewolf movie. That is a movie everyone should see.
Yeah. No, I was trying to joke into a segue there because that actually was the last time Universal has really done anything with those properties. Like I know, a few years later they did the Wolfman remake, but they haven't done none of the Frankenstein movies of recent years were theirs. I don't think I Frankenstein was theirs. Neither was Victor Frankenstein.
But they were gonna do Dark Universe.
Yeah,
plans.
So that's the thing. It's very interesting to me. That's just like they created the modern depictions of like Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Dracula, and all that. And joking aside, like the last time they had done anything with their classic characters was those fucking Alvin and the Chipmunk movies, which I can now as an adult appreciate. Like they had Maurice LaMarche play the Wolfman and the Alvin Chipmunks meet Wolfman, and he did a pretty decent job, I think, trying to play as Lon Chaney Jr. But yeah, it's sad that they don't do more with this, and when they try doing it, they've just fucked it up badly.
I agree. These are timeless stories, and they could be retold.
I mean, this is just like a great scene where you see the desperation of him being like, I'm sorry, I need to leave. Like, I love you, but like, I need to fucking leave right now. Because I'm going to hurt you.
It's just a genuinely great performance. That's the key to selling it. Yeah, because anyone else playing this could have just half-assed it, but you can tell Chaney really gives a damn. Well, I think everybody does.
It's a real humanity to him.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like, this movie had no right to be as good as it was for like how little crap the studio at large gave it. Like, but everyone else, like, this seemed to be like a passion project. Like, but again, like, Claude Rains is like 8 months away from being at Casablanca. He was a few years removed from being in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's like this was a real step down in theory for him. From Mr. Smith to this. But he doesn't half-ass it.
Yeah. With Lon Chaney, it's just interesting because it's like he doesn't give that sort of stiff, broad theatrical performance that you would typically see from a movie of this era. Because that's sort of what acting was judged by, the standards of like how someone would act in like a theater, and like his performance seems a lot more naturalistic and human. At least to me, it always did.
Yes, I think so too.
And he literally just looks like someone who's like, I'm the brink. Like, he's at this point.
It's not to say naturalism is better than theatricality or anything like that, so much as just that always stuck out to me about him in this.
I agree.
And it could have easily been more broad and more theatrical.
Well, and that's the problem. Is like, as much as I love like Dwight Fry and all those like early Universal monster movies, like especially in Dracula when he's playing Renfield, like he's like, isn't this a very weird conversation for supposedly sane men to have? Like it was bug eyes. And it's like, this is fucking a little too silly for me.
Well, to be fair, he is insane.
Yeah. Again, I'm not trying to say any form of acting is better than the other. It's just an observation as to how this one's doing it.
No, I agree with you that they have their places, but like I'm glad they didn't try. Like at least with Dwight Fry, it's like he's not the main character of the movie. With this, I think they made the right choice with how Lon Chaney performed it.
Yes. I disagree.
You undermined me. Got it. Cool. Yeah, Jacob hasn't been. The previous two commentaries, Jake undermined me. I then undermined him, and we said that Jacob would have to undermine one of us, and he hasn't really.
I haven't had to because no one's undermined me because I'm always right.
No, you're not.
Okay, now we have to team up on Jake for the last 15
I'm
minutes.
definitely not always right because I didn't realize we were recording this commentary today. I thought we were just going to watch the movie. And then Andrew pulled out a mic and I was like, oh.
Jacob was
I'm glad I've seen this a few times.
I want to get ready and get all the commentaries recorded for the month of October, like knocked out so I can have my editing time with them. So, we're recording this even before the month of October begins.
Yes.
Technically speaking.
But we're still in Halloween season, according to the grocery stores.
But they'll never know.
Oh, I'm starting to decorate tomorrow night.
I'm totally... I love this time of year, so I have no problem with this stuff coming out earlier than it should.
Yeah.
Are we going to put, like backs on our City of Angels poster?
Giving out some of their interior decorating for their apartment. Gotta put a Frankenstein mask on the giant cardboard cutout of Ant-Man.
Well, I'm going to paint Kevin Dunn's face.
Yeah, no one knows what our apartment looks like right now, so this probably doesn't make a ton of sense, but just note that the giant cutout of Ant-Man with a picture of Peter Fonda from the classic 1994 movie Deadfall totally makes sense in context.
Oh, boy.
Another great shot here.
Yeah.
With the shot of Peter Fonda from Deadfall on the wall.
Yeah. Love how the moonlight really hits him.
I always thought this scene was really weird, like how she's just like being such an asshole to him, and she's like, She's like, oh, yeah, I know you're going to have to beat your son to death shortly.
Well, it's setting up for what he has to do.
I know, but, she's like egging him on, like, why are you so frightened, Sir John? It's like, I always thought she was, like, for such a helpful character she is, and, like, in Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, she goes on a road trip with Larry Talbot, essentially.
And what did they talk about on the way, other than, like, the curse of the werewolf?
Hey, remember when you beat my son to death, and you now have the curse he had? Well, that was cool. I'm also gonna get hit by a car and then like have my like son put a curse on a fat lawyer to make him lose a lot of weight. That's a reference.
I finally watched that movie like a few years ago, and the thing that stuck out to me was not any of the stuff about him becoming thinner, but the guy who turned into like the reptile.
Yeah,
that was much more creepy.
That would have been the more entertaining movie.
I don't remember this at all, and I watched it with you.
You don't remember Thinner? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, I remember.
Thinner, directed by Tom Holland.
I remember watching a movie called Thinner. I don't remember what happened in it.
Starring the guy who did
by
RoboCop.
Tom Holland.
Yeah, the guy played RoboCop like in the third one, I think. The one where he could fly. The best RoboCop.
Wait, was that the guy?
Yeah.
Wow. He's like wearing the fat suit the whole movie and everything.
Yeah.
In RoboCop 3.
That would have been okay. That would have been hilarious. There's like a RoboCop plot to be made where it's like Endgame and Thor becoming fat, RoboCop becoming fat.
Just the armor's like buckling. It's like the seams are ripped. It's splitting out the costume.
It's like athletes when they try and come out of retirement.
How does that work?
But fun fact with this scene, when after he attacks Evelyn Akers and she falls to the ground, she had to lay down there. This isn't like Party City fog now. Like this was like some acrid chemical, and she actually passed out from being on the ground so long, and they forgot about her and went to lunch, and then just like after a while, they're like, "Hey, wait, where's Evelyn or Evelyn?" They're like, "Oh shit!" And they like go searching, and they'd forgotten where they had filmed of her falling, so they're just on the ground on their hands and knees trying to find her.
And Lon Chaney's thinking,
At
least it wasn't me.
To be fair, that would have been pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
That girl that just fainted there and everything.
Yeah. Oh god. Just imagining like Lon Chaney Jr. getting crap beaten out of him.
He's actually the director before it rolls like, Claude, I want you to actually beat Lon. I haven't told him, but let's see what happens. Are you sure? Yes, just do it.
Lon's actually just pissed about all the abuse now and actually trying to kill him.
No, Lon told me he wants you to hit him.
He said something about your mother.
Now, fun fact with Evelyn Akers, though, she actually married an actor by the name of Richard Denning, who, connection to the Universal Monsters again, is one of the guys who, one of the explorers in Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, one of my other favorites.
Yeah, he's the one who gets bandaged up and killed partway through the movie.
I haven't seen that movie in years since I was
I
a kid,
haven't either.
but I loved it as a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, he's also notable for being the husband in the radio show Lucille Ball did as a precursor to I Love Lucy.
Well, what a great note to end on is Lon Chaney dies
Yeah.
before our eyes.
Now, this transformation actually is pretty good. Like, you can see
Yeah.
it a little bit, where his head was moved back a little too much, but a lot better than his legs.
I love these slow, painless werewolf transformations. It looks so smooth and comfortable for the victim.
It says he'll be in peace for eternity. But we
It's
know that's
1943.
But we know that's a lie.
He had a year off.
What was it? Was it Van Helsing where the transformation was like they would come out of their skin? Or
Yes, they tore their
Yeah.
skin off. It was so cool.
Yeah, that was wild.
I love that. I love that movie.
They did that in the movie Wolf Cop, too.
I don't give a fuck about Wolf Cop. I want to talk about Van Helsing. I love that film. Oh, it's great. It's so dumb, but so wonderful.
I always thought this part was so sad. Just like, he knows the fucking truth. It's like, I beat my son to death.
Yeah, no, it's part of the tragedy. The father must kill the son.
Yeah, I mean, it's a
the brother
legitimate-
must kill the brother.
It's a downer ending.
That's great.
It's a great movie, downer
Yeah.
ending, though.
That's part of what makes makes it great.
Yeah. So on that note, we hope you enjoyed the commentary for the Wolfman and have a happy Halloween.
Have a bad Halloween. There. Now this commentary track ends on the downer too. It's thematically parallel.
Consistent.
Thank you and good night.